You're listening to the Women's Wealth Canada podcast with Glory Gray. Be sure to download and subscribe using your favorite podcast app and like us on Facebook.
Are you going through a life transition and need to find a wealth advisor to manage your investments? You don't have to feel discouraged wondering how to find the right one. Grab my free guide, 12 Smart Questions to Ask When Interviewing a Wealth Advisor. This guide gives you all the questions and why you should ask them. Just go to glorygray.com, pop in your email address, and we'll send it right to your inbox. Hi everyone, I'm Glory Gray, and welcome to the Women's Wealth Canada podcast. My guest today, Antonia Medeiros, was born in London and traveled many places with her American father and French mother, eventually landing in France as a journalist. She decided to immigrate to Montreal, where she met her husband and started a family. The common thread always weaving through her life was stories that people shared with her along the way, and she loved them so much, in fact, that she became a published author of fiction. You can find her French family saga, Le Crève-Cœur, on Amazon. And her love of stories led to her current business as an executive coach and highly sought-after speaker. Antonia is a dear friend of mine, and we've spent many a late night debating the challenges of the world and our part in it. Her children call me the bagel lady, because every time I come to stay with them, I bring bagels with me so we can sit down and have a quick breakfast together before they carry on with their busy lives. Recently, we've been talking about gender equality in the workplace, and we realized that we both feel so passionate about the subject that we needed to share it with you. If you were sitting down with Antonia and me, we'd offer you a cup of herbal tea, but you may be driving or doing other things right now, so I'll just invite you to join us as we talk about the financial impact of gender equality with Antonia Medeiros. So you and I, we've had many discussions on this, that we feel strongly about empowering women and how we can best do that and how employers and society can do that. So do you think women alone will be able to accomplish economic gender equity in our world?
No. The answer is no. No, because first of all, why would it be our job to do that? This is everybody's concern. And I think there's a lot of pressure that is being put on women to solve the problem of gender equity or equality, right? It is not our job to do that. It's everybody's job. I always, go back to parenting. It would be like saying, well, my example, right? I have two boys and a girl. It's like me saying to my daughter, well, your job is to make sure you're going to be an empowered woman. And that's it. Sort yourself out, darling, and just make sure you advocate for yourself. Yes, that is step one. But what about my two boys? Your job is also to help her in the same way. Her job is also to help you succeed. And we see that inside the family. But these, I hope that these dynamics are things that we're going to see within their own household when they become adults, within the organizations that they work for. It's everybody's responsibility. And inside corporations, we often rely on women to create the changes, or we rely on HR to create changes. These are leadership challenges. They're fundamental leadership challenges. In the same way, it's parents' responsibilities to make sure that all their children are empowered, have the same opportunities, and have the same. It's everybody's concern and mission. And the reason, and I think this is where we lose a lot of people, and where there's a lot of miscommunication, because it's not just about what is right. It's also because it makes sense on so many other levels. We know today that organizations that are working towards gender equality are often organizations that have greater economical success, that have healthier work environments, that have better productivity, that also make economical decisions that are based on reality. You know, a perfect example is organization that sell consumer goods. Who's the primary buyer in a family? Women. If you don't have women in your staff and in your organization to understand how people buy, you're missing a huge portion of your market. So those balances are essential on so many levels. It's true, you know, in corporations. I think it's true in politics. It's true. We know that. We know that. And I think maybe we need to talk more about the data. You know, the real data of this is the financial impact of not promoting gender equality in an organization. We know today that so many women are leaving, for example, because there's no flexibility at work, right? So these are educated women that are essential pieces of the organization, and they're going to leave because there's no flexibility. They feel there's no understanding, there's biases, there's lack of opportunities, etc. What a miss. Can we really afford to see all of these women leave because we can't have the difficult conversations? So no, I don't think it's only women's job to do that. There's a lot of pressure to put on women to say, you're going to solve this problem. It's everyone. And it's true that it takes time. You know, it's funny. I was reading this morning an article reminding that you would know about this, of course, reminding us that I think it's in the late 70s only that women were allowed to ask for a credit card and access a bank account without their husband's permission.
That's right. They had to co-sign.
That's not that long ago. Things take time, but things could go faster.
What are some simple ways that, so you have sons and daughters.
Yes.
And B, you work with leaders of companies, helping to explain to them how they can create success by having gender equality or working towards it. What are some simple solutions that you tell your sons or tell these leaders on how they can make a difference and start empowering women?
So it's a different conversation if indeed you're talking to business owners and it depends. You know, what's very interesting is that sometimes people hire me for completely something else, right? Yeah, efficiency at work, productivity can be something that's very, right? And then we evolve at times in those conversations. So at home, I think it's different. For me, at home, it's about sharing responsibilities. I mean, same thing at work in a way, but I like to always give the example of the household because, you know, it's a little bit like a mini company and a mini organization, except that you're not getting paid for this. and and it's a lifetime job. It's very messy and there's a lot of emotions involved. So, you know, the being able to share tasks in your household is essential. We all, men and women, we all have a lot of biases around certain things, right? Thinking that certain house tasks are better done by women than they are by men just because of gender. We know that's completely ridiculous. But things are a little bit more insidious than that. You know, sometimes you start doing something and it comes from a good place, and then you end up stuck with that responsibility. And it's really hard then to turn around to your partner, for example, and say, well, now I'd like you to take the responsibility of this because I want to be doing something else. So taking habits like this can be hard sometimes to change. But what I try as a parent to do is really for everybody to share the same responsibilities. Now, some kids might be better than others at certain things, which is great, but that has nothing to do with gender. Your son might be vacuuming more efficiently than your daughter, or I don't know, your daughter might be better at, I don't know, cutting the lawn or cleaning the car than your son. It doesn't matter, right? These are all mundane tasks that you don't have to have a PhD to do this. Like, it's just not. And I also think, well, when my kids leave home, I don't want them to depend on somebody else to do these things or assume that their partner, whoever that partner is going to do it for them. Because ultimately, as parents, that's what we're showing, right? So we're all guilty of certain biases when it comes to gender. I often give this example. I worked very closely in the last 2 years with childcare educators. And, this is a whole conversation here, or how essential these people are in women's success in their careers. When you're a childcare educator, this is in Canada, at least, it's 98% of women. But there are men who want to be childcare educators. And that's not easy. It is not easy for men to enter that world. So this is a very good example of the other way around. Women also have biases against men entering in that world and taking care of their children. It requires sometimes adjustment. And I have met absolutely extraordinary educators that were male throughout trainings and workshops that I've led. And it's so interesting because they bring something so unique. Sometimes it's a different way of caring. It's a different type of sense of humor. It's a different personality. It's a different types of activities sometimes. This is when you see the power of a team, right? And we need that. And this goes back to this gender equality conversations that we were having before, where women are asking for more flexibility at work, but I also think that the newer generation of men are asking for that also. They want to be part of that. They want to be involved in it with their kids. And we're seeing more and more balance within households when it comes to tasks and things like that. But I think that is extremely, extremely important. I attended a very interesting talk. It was filmed in the UK. It was online, but it was extremely interesting about companies like Marks and Spencer, for example, who really dedicated that their mission was to establish gender equality as much as possible within their organization. It took them, I believe, a little over 10 years, between 8 and 10 years, and they're still working at it, right? So it's possible. It's absolutely possible. But again, as I was saying before, it becomes a leadership decision. Right? So it all starts from the top. Same thing in a household. Are you having the conversations with your partner about workload at home, about the amount, the mental load that you're taking on, or the things that you have to think about, and maybe your partner doesn't as much? It works both ways because it benefits both ways.
Do you think it's important for people to have these conversations before they get together with that partner and before they marry?
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. But I don't know. I don't think you can have the conversation. You can be really willing. I think when you have kids, we all have great intentions before we have kids. And then when they come, it appears to be way harder than what we thought it was going to be, right? So I think that, yes, I think it's important to have conversations. I think there are ways to see very quickly what kind of partner are you entering, into a relationship with. I think there are certain fundamental things that you can see even before because some couples don't want to have kids, right? It doesn't mean that there's not workload to share, for sure, right? It doesn't mean that their work is not going to be impacted one way or the other by all the other responsibilities. We're talking about caregiving. Caregiving is not just with children. How many people are taking care of aging parents? Sometimes have a spouse that is, disabled. When you have a career, when you have work responsibilities, it's very difficult, very lonely and very difficult. So I think that is the fundamental piece of everything, having those conversations. Yes, before you marry, you can have conversations with your partner for sure. I think that will tick some boxes. But actions speak louder than words, right?
What happens when women become mothers? Does it change things, do you think?
Changes everything. It changes. This is for me one of the favorite parts of my job. This is a topic that I find absolutely fascinating. And for me, in a woman's life, it's really one of those stages that are absolutely transformative. Everything changes. For the best and for the worst also. And I think there really is a massive identity shift, which is really the part that I'm most interested and that I see in my practice all the time, right? Sometimes years after they've had those children, where really it's been such a whirlwind, sometimes one child after the other, and then all of a sudden at one point they realize, I've changed. There's a part of me that I've left behind. There's a part of me that I need to grieve that I will never come back. And yet there's this other part of me. I think there's a lot of boldness and bravery that comes with motherhood that is extraordinary, but it's a bag of mixed feelings sometimes. And I think one of the hardest things is being a mother is not easy, for sure, especially if you don't always have the support or if you are the one doing everything at home. But I think the biggest disappointment for women is more often than not the reality of going back to work after becoming a parent, right? The missed opportunities, the biases, the really feeling that you're a little bit on a sideline and that you have to choose, losing motivation at work because you can't keep up with everything that you have to do outside, being there for your kids, picking them up early. The first few years, your kids are sick all the time, which is perfectly normal. But I mean, so the lack of support within corporations, I think, is quite dreadful more often than not. Your relationship with your work and your career shifts. Your salary is affected. And even if you do not have children, right, there's a thing called the motherhood penalty, which affects mothers, but also affects women who do not have children and decide not to have children, right? Because there are biases against women between a certain age. If they apply for a job, right, the employer might think, oh, well, she is in an age group where, she might potentially have children, even if this woman has no intention of having women. And that, can determine outcomes. So they also end up having a penalty against them one way or the other because of all of that. So this goes back to the conversation we were having about the importance of reshifting the culture around caregiving, which I think is, once we start doing that, I think we'll do massive jumps towards better gender equality and equity. I believe there are things in my life I would never have been able to do had I not become a mother. I think it gave me bravery. I think it also, I often laugh about this with my clients. I think as we get older, motherhood does it. And I think perimenopause and menopause does it also. I think this tolerance for BS becomes extremely low
Yes.
as these moments appear in our life, right? I think motherhood is the one big step. I think after that, you're like, you can't, you just, and then perimenopause and menopause is like the icing on the cake where you're like, okay, I'm done with all of this. It's my time.
I was talking with a young man who's probably in his 30s, and he said, women over 50 terrify me. And I said, why is that? And he said, he said, I don't know why. And I said, you know what? It's just that they just aren't going to take it anymore.
No.
They might have
Absolutely.
appeased you in the early days, but they're just not going to do it anymore. Thank you very much.
No. And it's interesting because a lot of women hire me during those times because they can see that they're not going to take it anymore. And they're like, they don't know what to do with that. They're like, I need to set boundaries. I need to start saying no. How do I do that? Like, I feel I need to do this. Like, what's going to happen? It's a chance and an opportunity to redefine yourself. You're shedding something you no longer need. Again, you let go of that and you finally embrace the next chapter of your life where you can really feel, you're free to do what you want. You're free to have, the relationships that you want. You're free to say no. You don't have to hang out with anybody you don't want to hang out with. Again, this is very empowering. And motherhood is too. And I wish for more alliance, again, as we were talking about that, with men around that, because as I think for a partner, it's also an awesome experience to see their partner like all of a sudden being more. It can be scary for certain people, but at the same time, how amazing and liberating. But being able to understand these fascinating phases of women's life. And this goes back to your first question, which is, what can we do? What can we really do to create gender equality? Well, maybe gender equality is just also being able to understand each other, and be curious about each other. Understand we have different phases. Men and women have different phases in their life. They have different sense of time. They have different ways of doing things. And this should bring us together. Our differences, we all talk about the importance of being inclusive. Well, inclusive starts in very simple things. Just being able to look at the person in front of you, be curious about them without judgment, and say, I didn't know this. That's interesting. That makes me uncomfortable. Or that I find that funny. Or like, why, how, ask questions.
Squatch and I just went through 26, it's our 26th wedding anniversary. And we still will say things. First of all, we still learn things about each other. And he continues to surprise me and continue to evolve. Luckily, we've evolved in a way that at least is going in the same general direction. Do you think that can sometimes happen, though, that the directions go in different ways?
Absolutely. And we changed so much. Remember when you were 20, Glory?
Yeah, I barely recognize that woman now.
Right. I know. So imagine now, it's hard to evolve as a partner, with your partner. It takes a lot of work to evolve together. So congratulations to you on that, because being able to be curious about each other, navigate conflict in a different way, all that is so essential. And I think, you know what? If your partner is not good for you anymore, well, that's okay too. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay, because we change so much. What are the odds? I mean, some people believe that we're not meant to be with the same partner all our life,
That's
right?
I think Margaret Mead said something about that. We actually need, as women, 3 different partners in our lifetime.
Yes. What an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Right? When I have an argument with my husband, I think about that too. I was like, oh, maybe. But the difference is that I can laugh about it with him.
Yeah.
I can say, theory about different partners. That's the difference, right? Is that I am able to laugh with him about it, and then we giggle and then we move on, right? But yes, the thing is, today we're so lucky to have the choice. We can choose our partner. There are countries where it's not possible. It's still not possible to this day. We can decide to leave. We can decide to stay. I mean, freedom of choice is incredible. We can choose to have children, not to have children. Sometimes it's nice to remember that. That's pretty amazing. It's pretty awesome. Right? It's okay.
That we have these choices.
It's okay to change. We have these choices. We worked hard for them. We shouldn't take them for granted, right? There are countries where it's like choices of being removed, although we thought it was a given. But we still, let's celebrate and embrace the fact that we have those choices as women and as men.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is missing in, I'm speaking again from a North American point of view, what do you think is missing in women's definition of success?
That's an interesting question. I think maybe we're not asking ourselves the right questions when it comes to our definition of success. And this goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. Your definition of success at 20 might not be the same as it is when you're 50. And that's okay too. What works for you in your first decade might not the following one. And that's absolutely normal. So I think the first thing when it comes to success is ask yourself the right questions. Take the time to redefine, your measure of success. And don't base your measure of success on external validation on what works for somebody else, right? Society tells us that having materialistic things is a sign of success. Having a sports car or having a whatever, right? Does this work for you? Is this your measure of success? You want to be a stay-at-home mother. That's your measure of success. Go for it. 10 years in, you want to change your mind? No problem. What do you want now? Right? So I think allowing yourself to be flexible, allowing yourself to change your mind, and not basing your success on somebody else's measure of success. I still see in many of my clients who are in their 40s and 50s who still tell me that they realize that they based their success, their career, and their measure of success on what their parents wanted for them, on what their father wanted for them, or what their mother wanted for them. And always going back to that and feeling and coming short because they always feel that they're not good enough. And really being able to just shift that and just say, that was somebody else's dream for me. That's not what I want. I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be a plumber. I think that's what's your dream? Why do you want that dream? And these are the things these questions that we ask during coaching sessions, which are really important questions. Why do I want this? Why do I really want this? What am I looking to get? And why do I want to get that? What is it going to give me?
What do you think about women's relationship with money? Has that changed? What do you see when you talk about that piece with your clients?
I see a lot of women having very challenging relationships with money, for all sorts of different reasons. I think the first one is because we associate more often than not money as something that is masculine. Just, historically, sociologically, men were the major breadwinners, right? For a very, very long time. So it was this kind of cliche thing where, like, men brought in the money, women were good with, nurturing and taking care of kids. Well, today it's completely different. But we haven't exactly done the shift, the way we should at times. I collaborated for a workshop. It was really interesting with some women who were commercial bankers. And they were explaining to me from a big bank here in Canada, and they were explaining to me how women business owners at an alarming percentage are very reluctant to ask for a credit line because they think that as a woman, they're never going to get it. So they don't even bother in small businesses. What does that tell you? This is, I mean, the stats are like quite surprising. I fell off my chair when they said that. So it's really interesting. It just goes to prove that it is complicated. Is it because, I think first of all, it comes from how were you brought up? We know that more often than not, and it is changing, in the last generation, so generation, maybe your generation, you're in my generation, our parents, the father was often the one who was the initiator of conversations around money with the daughters. And women who had a good relationship to money or with money, or who mastered their finances, were often women who had been taught by their father on how to manage their finances. This is changing as women are working, but you know firsthand, right, in your own practice, that you still see all the time women coming to you saying, I'm divorced and I have no idea what the finances at home, or I don't know the numbers. I don't know how this works. I don't know, right? So I think that education is essential. Being able to talk about money, and changing your relationship to money. And the one thing that I say all the time to women is to remember that money is feminine.
That's interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's fertile. It reproduces itself, right? And women often, when it comes to money, women like to get money also to give back, because sometimes it's for their children, for their families, for the we're not saying that men are not. It's not that. It's just that we have to remember that we like to give back. We like to share. We're very communal creatures. And money is a tool for that. Money is a tool of empowerment. Money is a tool of independence, right? So that fertility and abundance is very feminine. So I think that I always hope that this is something that's going to help them shift their relationship to money. Sometimes there's shame in talking about money, right? We attach a lot of emotions to money. Right? Money is just a tool.
To something
It's a tool.
Perhaps greater than ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And remember that money, when you accumulate money, when you're wise about your money, this is a possibility to give back to others.
I think often we
Right.
might get stuck as women in thinking that, well, if I am wealthy, if I have a lot of money, then I'm greedy, I'm selfish. And you're
Yes,
saying the opposite.
absolutely. Yeah. No, of course not. Like if you have more money, you might be able to, I don't know, buy a nice trip to your parents. You might be able to pay for education for your children. You might be able to buy yourself an apartment and be free of rent and just, so when you retire, you have something of your own. That feminine, nurturing, fertile aspect of money, I think is worth remembering. Do you agree?
I do.
Glory
I
Gray?
absolutely agree. And I'd love to just hear somebody else say it other than myself preaching into the wind.
I think education is fundamental. And I just want to share a little anecdote about my own daughter, who just like her mother, struggled immensely with math at school. So she had to take a little bit of a detour, and do what they call here workplace, right? Which is the math that is taught to people who go in the trades. And during this math class that she did, she learned all about how to manage your money, how to pay taxes, how to do investments, how to do like all these things. And I'm thinking, hold on a second. Every single student should go through this class. Compulsory. Right? Like we all need to know how to do this. We all need to know how to manage our finances. And we need to do it when we're 15, 16, 17. And we should be able to go back to it as we're in our 20s, as we want to get a mortgage, as we want to understand credit, as we want to understand all of these are essential conversations we need to have and be educated on, men or women, doesn't matter.
And what are some of the things that she got out of that?
Oh, well, she learned a lot, and we were having really interesting conversations. So, I'm my husband's, he has conversations about finances with her, which I love. So we're like, managing her money differently. We're like saving. We're like, how much is your play money? How much is your investment money? What do you want to do with that money? I'm going to put a bit on top of your savings so that this takes you further, but you're not allowed to use it for this. All of these things for her. And, same thing with all of my kids, super important. And, you see it right from the start, when kids that are little, they have like pocket money, right? And they're, and I have 3 kids and they're all very different. And, you got the spender, the the one who like walks, with the money box, in the candy lane, and it's like, how much can I buy with my money? There's nothing left. It's all candy stuff. And then the one that saves and never touches his money. And then the other one who's like trying to understand, how I can get more by doing less. So, these are really interesting. So again, I think that's the theme of our conversation, right? Is like, it's education is key. Education is key all throughout our life, not just when we're young. Education is empowerment, it is freedom, and it is independence. It all starts there. What do you think?
It's kind of been my raison d'etre,
Yeah.
the reason for this podcast, the reason for my blog, just to get the message out there and start these conversations and educate women so that they can educate the next generation and themselves,
Yes.
and these communities, our community, our world can be better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think sometimes we forget that this might be very obvious for certain people, but not for others. There are women who get to 30, 40 and who have no idea how to manage their money, who have no idea what goes in and out. So you're right. And it's not just about us, it's about the next generation too.
What are you excited about this year, the rest of the year?
Oh, I'm very excited about my trip to Kenya. This is I think the journey itself is going to be hard, but 300K through walking for 10 days. So, but through landscape and villages, in a unique way. But it's also for me the partnership with the organization and what we're going to do with that money.
So what is the name of the
So the organization is called Lalamba Canada. I'll share the link if you want, if people are curious and interested. And I am, as a walker, but also as part of the organization, I'm raising money. So looking for people to donate. 1 year of schooling is $400.
Wow.
Which is nothing. How many Starbucks is that in your life?
Mm-hmm.
And that's 1 year of education for someone in the world. So, and you and I talk about this all the time, the importance of education for women and for everyone. Because, these young girls, once they have a trade, once they know how to do something, the economical, repercussion of that is huge. An educated woman will take everybody far, not just herself, everybody, right? I mean, you talk about financial education to everyone through the podcast and through the work. But, when I talk about that, I love to share your story, which I think is just so wonderful, right? Seeing people come by to your office, seeing women who have no idea, who've never taken care of finances, come to your office and saying, I need help, and building a business on that to be able to support them. Right?
It's a joy and a privilege, for sure.
Exactly. So I'm super excited about that. I'm working on a side project. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's around, women in trades and construction, which remains an industry where it's extremely male dominated still. There's a lot of biases. There's a lot of psychological safety challenges still. And therefore, a very exciting field for me. So I'm working on a project. I'm trying to see how I can combine my skill sets and my passion to try to make a difference in that world. And I've met some really interesting women in the trades that are, oh my God, just so powerful, dedicated, passionate women, but also passionate men who want to change things and who are trying to make a difference for women. And so I don't know where it's going to go. It's still ongoing, but I'm excited about that. And there's a part of me that always thinks, what if the trades and construction industry became a model on how to bring in, retain, and empower gender alliance in the workplace. But that's me with my natural optimism and big picture girl, right? I don't know. I'm still right. It's still at an early stage, but I'd love to be able to do something with that.
Mhm.
And I'm excited. I'm always excited about all the new clients I'm going to meet, all these wonderful people that are going to come to me and with whom I'm going to have wonderful discussions. That's what I love so much about what I do. Is I hope I give and help others, but I am also so inspired by so many of those people who are brave, who want to change, who want more for themselves, who want more joy, more happiness, more love, and freedom in their lives. And I think that's always something to admire and enjoy.
And you always inspire me whenever we talk.
We can talk for hours, Glory. That's what I love.
We can talk for hours. It's great to have an audience kind of sitting in on the conversations that we always have together, the many conversations.
Yes, we do.
Thanks so much for being on the Women's Wealth Canada podcast today, Antonia.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I am so grateful for this conversation and all the ones we've had all this time. Thank you for your friendship.
Now, I have some good news to tell you. Our office is accepting new clients this year. So if you live in Canada and want to get serious about getting your financial house in order, go to glorygray.com and get in touch with me. If this podcast helped you, please subscribe and leave us a positive review and tell others about it so we can help them too. I'm Glory Gray, your personal trainer for financial fitness, telling you to take charge of your finances, plan for the future, but most of all, enjoy today. And bye for now.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, or legal advice. It is not an offer to sell or buy, or an endorsement, recommendation, or sponsorship of any entity or security cited. Mutual funds offered through Portfolio Strategies Corporation. Other products and services provided through Glory Gray Wealth Solutions.